Introducing ISO Color Edge. Precision is essential for any professional working with images. Whether you're an artist, a retoucher, or a visual effects specialist, you need to know that what you see at the start of a project is precisely what you'll get at the end. Color Edge monitors give consistent, reliable accuracy that guarantee no surprises within your color workflow. So what you see in real life is what you see on screen, and what you see on screen is what you see in real life. That's precisely why professionals all over the world trust ISO Color Edge for their image creation. ISO Color Edge. Discover living, breathing color.
Photosatin Premium RC is a resin-coated paper with an alpha cellulose backing, and it's got a really soft, smooth surface that almost looks like a matte paper, except it's got that extra bit of black density and contrast and image sharpness that give it its satin-like quality. It's reminiscent of traditional darkroom RC papers, and honestly, I was really surprised when I tried this paper for the first time. It's got great black density, great contrast, great image sharpness. The colors are really vibrant, but it also has adds a nice softness to the highlights that give it its satin look and feel. And because of that, it's a paper that works with a whole variety of images when you want the look of a photographic type paper, especially if you're matting and framing your images. Photosatin Premium RC is one of my favorites.
We only get one shot at this life thing. Might as well make an extraordinary one. Like maybe there was always a little seed in us that demanded more of life, or like to go out there and get some.
I want to empower women with the skills and confidence to explore the backcountry and to pursue anything they dare to dream.
We're in a pretty hectic zone.
No one will ever understand how hard it is.
Oh my God, we've lost our minds. We'll all be talking about that trip for the rest of our lives.
As image makers, we need to look around. We need to see the world. We need to go to museums. We need to go to galleries so we can understand the use of color and light and shadow. In that respect, everything needs to be considered. If there's a rule for the images that we're trying to make, they shouldn't just appeal to architects. They should be images that when framed, your grandmother falls in love with it and wants to hang it on her wall. So the purpose of our image making is not to recreate a photograph. We have the ability to play with light, to play with atmosphere that potentially makes that image more visually engaging. This is our perception of reality. There's an understanding of the color within a composition. So that color palette is often driven by the color in a brick, or the timber, or the floor. The image in its entirety needs to harmonize. As well as photography, there are painters.
Hi everyone, I am Kelly Brown. We're here at the Australian Photographic Prize for day 2 of judging. We're in room 3 and we're doing the Photographic Artist Award today. And we have an incredible panel of judges. For those of you online, you can't see us, we can't hear you, but you can get involved simply by watching and enjoying this entire category. We're going to kick things off with a run through of all of the entries. It is a long category, so bear with us. Make a cup of tea, get a cup of coffee. And our judges are going to have a look through each of these images first before we start. I'm also going to read the category description here for you. The Photographic Artist Award. This award is to honour the unique creativity and skill of the photographic composite artist. While photography is a large part of a photographic artist's image production, there is often an equal weighting on the post-production skill required to bring a composite together. As a unique feature of this category, captures used within a composite may be from any date. However, the artwork creation date must be on or after the 3rd of June 2019. This category is to ultimately reward creativity across any chosen genre or theme. The full range of post-production and digital manipulation techniques is permitted. Entries are submitted as digital entries and they are judged on an AZO monitor, and AZO is the category sponsor. So we're going to start with this run through of many, many images. Let's go. I'll do that. Lights? Oh, we might actually get our lights turned off. Good point. So because we are judging these on a fully calibrated AZO monitor, we need a very neutral environment to view these images on. Ready? Let's go. Wow. I think it's safe to say that every single one of our judges was completely glued to the screen then and in absolute awe. All right, we are ready to start this category off. So if our judges in waiting can take their seats, and we have 5 judges on the panel ready to rock and roll. And You may be wondering, for those of you at home watching, how do you judge a category like this? And that's why we have 12 incredibly experienced judges here ready to share their knowledge with us. And on the panel, we have Chris Saunders, we have Kelly Barker, we have Christopher Ian, we have Julie Ewing, and we have Matt Palmer. All very, very talented photographers, and here, excited, ready to start with our first image, please. Each of our judges love to get up out of their seats, take a close look at what's on the screen in front of them. If you don't have an ASO monitor at home, I highly recommend it. All right, thank you, judges. We have a score of 79. We are going to celebrate our highly commended images because that is still a very, very deserving score and a very good score to have received. So I might get a comment, if I can, from Chris Saunders. You're right on the average there, if that's all right.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. There's like a dream-like ethereal quality to this image that I really was quite taken by. I think to bring this up into the next scoring range, I was finding the vignette a bit dark around the edge of the image, and then perhaps lightening that off a bit more may enhance that ethereal feel that was coming through.
Excellent feedback, thank you. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 74. If I can get a comment from you, Christopher Ian.
You've got a great idea. The disappointment is you've managed to convey a sense of depth in the human on the right beautifully, but the ball should have the same sense of depth in it. It's as though every object in that ball, which really would benefit from some of the objects being slightly distorted because of the curvature, they're on a very flat plane, so it's not convincing.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. Definitely a concept to go back and explore further. Next image, please. So one thing about judging on an ASO monitor is our judges don't have, it being a digital category, don't have the option to go in and zoom in. They are looking at the image as it sits, full screen on the monitor. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 76. And you're all again very close there. Kelly, can I get a comment from you, please?
The posing in this is really quite lovely, and there's an interesting story. I just feel it's a little unclear, but the lighting differences between the two just doesn't make it quite as conducive as I'd like to see it.
Okay. Thank you. Next image, please. All right, if you are watching at home and you are in Melbourne, come join us. It's better in person. We're a friendly bunch. But if you want to keep your jammies on, because it's pretty chilly outside, I don't blame you. We are at the Photography Studies College in Melbourne. It's been an incredible venue for us for the last couple of years. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 83. And again, you're all really close there. Julie, you're right on the average. Can I get a comment? Thank you.
Yes, well done to the photographer here. And it's a beautiful, serene, high-key landscape. Just, you love to look into the depth of it, the shape of the trees leading into that beautiful bird placement. It's, yeah, a really appealing landscape.
Christopher, would you like to add something?
This is amazing because it's not a print award, yet you've given us texture, and that's a real achievement. That sky's got beautiful texture as if it was printed on the most acrylic paper.
Lovely. Thank you for your feedback. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 89. And Julie is on 97 and she's going to challenge this for us. Well done.
Absolutely sublime. It's masterful, it's perfectly created, perfectly curated. The lighting is absolutely perfect, the expressions, the texture on the gown. It's one person, so the creation of this piece is just so professionally done. It's absolutely beautiful. The colour palette's divine. I cannot fault it, and I'm imploring you judges to bring this up to gold.
All right, Matt, can I get a comment from you, please?
I read this as perhaps the background contributing in that maybe that's where she's come from, and then this image is about her journey to something else. I'm not sure what that something else is, but you do have an element of ceremony involved. I think what held me back from gold, and I am prepared to listen very closely, is the lower right foot. I feel like is not posed with the same elegance on the far right side here as all of the rest of the hands and limbs. And I think there was one other thing, but I've forgotten already, but it is very impressive.
All right, Chris Saunders at the other end, can I get a comment from you, please? You enjoyed this image?
I did. I scored it 91, so I'm up there with you, Julie. So there's some of the things that sort of took me away on this image are the satin and sheen sort of feel that again, on this monitor are really popping through. I can only imagine what it would be like on paper. The other thing is there's a brilliant flow between on the arms of the different people through. There's like a figure of 8 sort of shape that draws you through, and it's and it's framed by that circle in the back, or ellipse in the background. So yeah, there's some of the things I saw in it, but and it's just exquisitely well handled, just phenomenally well produced. So they're the reasons I put it in gold. I'm not sure of the ceremony, but I get that whole ceremony, and connection to a country back in the background as well.
Thank you. Julie, would you like to have your right reply, please?
Yeah, I feel like it's just a whole ode to femininity, and then she's finally found her place where she's got the crown and holding the flower, which is representative perhaps of her heritage. I noticed the toes, and look, she could be a ballet dancer because they get really ugly feet. And when you look at the positioning of her arms, which are absolutely beautiful, perhaps like she's about to do an arabesque. But no, she is... I don't think the toes don't concern me. Also, perhaps going back from where she was, the hardness of perhaps a life before until she's arrived at this place. But look, just if toes are the only thing that pull it down, wow, I gave it 97, so I took 3 off for that. It's absolutely sublime. I think this really is deservative of gold.
All right, thank you, judges. You do have your scoring criteria in front of you, so having another look at this. Julie, if you could keep your score on 97, and judges, if you could please re-enter your scores when you're ready. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 93. All right, before we have our next image, we might do a quick judge change. As I said, we've got lots of judges and lots of images to get through, so we're going to keep them nice and fresh. If I can please replace Chris Saunders, Kelly and Julie with Mika. Can I get you to come on? Did Mandarin just jump out? She did. And Adam, could I get you to jump on, please? And Belinda, could I get you to come on to the panel, please, as well? Thank you. All right, thank you. Judges, let's have our next image, please. So we have another full day here at the Photographic Studies College in Melbourne. Whilst judging is going on, we've also got some workshops happening. Adam Harrigan, who's just joined us on the panel, is giving a talk between 1 and 2. So if you are in the area, come on down. And we also have a workshop with Kelly Barker, who's just jumped off the panel. She's going to be teaching tomorrow at 9:30. Thinking today's Sunday, but it's definitely not. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 81. All right, Adam, you're right on the average there. Can I get a comment, please?
Yeah, a strong central figure that really draws you in. The colour, it stands out in amongst the monochrome. The light beams in the back sort of draw you into that. I find that the lightness at the bottom of the frame, the sort of that foggy or sort of lights, perhaps pulls me down, and it's not as believable as that light in the back, and pulls me away from that central image, which gets me away from those really lovely shapes and colour at the top. So just pushing me back up there would be great.
Okay. Thank you so much. Let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 77. Christopher, Ian, you're quite close to the average there. Can I get a comment, please?
I'm sure as you drew this up, you thought, what a great concept, I can pull this off. But you've been overwhelmed by technique. Look at your principal subject, the person. You've lit her shoulders, her arm, the back, more than you've actually given any interest in her face. So look at your principal subject, get that right, and then do your amazing effect on top of it. Because at the moment, the brightest area of the photo, the thing that's stealing attention, is an arm, bit of the back. The face is gorgeous, just highlight that.
Thank you. And Mika, can I get a quick comment?
I'd also just like to compliment the photographer on the positioning of the fronds. I know how easily they're broken and mangled, and I think you've done a really great job of showing us some really beautiful, delicate fronds here.
Nice. Thank you so much. All right, let's have our next image, please. All right, I've mentioned AZO a fair bit because they are the category sponsor here. The category sponsor has been extremely generous. The winner of the AZO Photographic Artist category wins not only a trophy, but also goes into the running to win the Creative Division and an AZO Color Edge monitor worth over $1,600. That's phenomenal. So if you have entered, you're in with a chance. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 80. Belinda, you're right on the average. Can I get a comment, please?
Sure thing, Kelly. Look, this image when it popped up is stunning. I'm enjoying the colours. It's really quite beautiful. To elevate it to a higher level, I would be just careful of our perspective. I feel like that cat is sliding off to the side there rather than sitting on the ground. It's not quite believable enough. But other than that, perfect, beautiful work.
Thank you for your feedback. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 84. And Matt would like to give us a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, a very clever image. The building obviously looks like an owl, but the photographer's taken it a little bit further by having a reflection of woodlands within the windows. So it's like we're seeing a reflection of the owl's eyes. What would elevate this further is just that little extra element to find when you look closer into the frame, whether that's something reflected in the window that kind of surprises us, or whether perhaps it's some sort of animal life interacting with the scene.
Thank you. Next image, please. Great feedback. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 78. Adam, you're pretty close to the average there. Can I get a comment, please?
Yeah, there's a really great exploration of texture here, and it's reflected in the main subject and in the background as well. I found that there's great depth in the front subject, but it sort of flattens out very quickly towards the back. I sort of lose that depth, and perhaps just a bit where the colouring in some of the lighting at the top of the main subject and down the bottom, there's just different shades or different temperatures of light that pull my eye away from really travelling through into that main subject.
All right, thank you for your feedback. Right, before we have our next image, let's do another quick judge change. Matt and Christopher, can I get you to jump off? And Mandarin and Lisa, can I get you to jump on, please? And while they're settling in, we might have our next image, please. Everyone's logged in. So I've got a sheet of paper here for those of you watching online, and beside each of our judges' names is how long they have been photographers. It's really quite phenomenal. I'm going to, whilst they're looking at this image, Adam Horrigan, who is on our panel, has been a photographer for 30 years. Sorry. Belinda has been a photographer for 14 years. Mandarin has been a photographer for, I can't quite work out what number that is, but 30 years. But she's shaking her head at me. The reason I'm reading this out is because every single one of our judges has so much experience and knowledge. And the reason that we have 5 judges on the panel is so that they can each bring so much experience and knowledge to every single image, to give them feedback, to provide a score based on our scoring criteria. So they're not just people we've pulled off the street, they have been hand selected. They're all extremely modest. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 84. Belinda, you're right on the average. Can I get a comment, please?
What an enjoyable image. Great storytelling going on here and a beautiful use of colour. I would have taken this higher if the technical compositing skills were just a little bit stronger. I'm finding some of the shadows to not be quite congruent with the actual, where the placement is of the light and so forth. So, Adam?
Adam, yeah, quick comment.
Really
Adam
quickly,
as well.
yeah, I enjoy the movement and sort of that explosive. No, I think some of that could be either emphasised or things that feels like, yes, they're not quite sharp, which gives that impression of movement. Perhaps emphasise the direction of that movement and make it look like a more natural motion blur, or even emphasise that further.
Absolutely. Well, it's definitely got our judges excited. Thank you. Let's have our next image, please. So Christopher Ian is not on the panel. He just left our panel. 43 years you've been doing this. That is phenomenal. 43 years of waking up every day and getting to do what you love. That's what's incredible. And he's pretending to ignore me. That's all right. I'm just admiring how long you've been a photographer for. It is a privilege to be amongst so many amazing artists here. Thank you, judges. We're waiting on one more score, and we have a score of 84. Well done. And you're all working very well there together. Could I get a comment, Mika, from you, please?
When I first saw this image, I actually did believe it was a cityscape from a distance. And so I was absolutely delighted to go up close and find out that it was all piles of staples. And as a lover of stationery, I am so impressed with that. I've seen this done with other items. I've never seen it done with staples. The reflection is very convincing. I just think it's really cleverly done. To take it into a higher category, maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen the little cookie, the little extra bit that would take it to the next level.
Right, thank you so much. Great feedback. Next image, please. You know what's surprising about photographers? They don't like to blow their own horn. Do you know what I mean? Like, you should be proud of what you've done and accomplished, and no one likes to get, I don't know, nice comments, do we? We all sort of tend to be quite modest. I'm going to blow my horn. Trying to keep everybody alive and on their toes here. I have been doing this for a long time as well, 20 years. Love photography, love being a part of this process and seeing entrants get amazing feedback and results. Thank you, judges. We've got a 78. Lisa, you're right on the average. Can I get a comment, please?
I'd like to commend the photographer. I really enjoyed that central placement. I really responded to that. These are majestic animals. You know, they deserve that weight and that balance. I struggled a little bit to take meaning from...
Can I just jump in here?
Yes, Kelly.
I'm so sorry, Lisa. Belinda, would you like to challenge?
Oh, is that what you were asking?
Before we go ahead here, we're good. We're all pretty close on that average score, but I just wanted, before you continued with your comment, just to ask.
All right.
Continue, Lisa,
thanks.
with your feedback.
So where I struggled with was the conceptual, I suppose, rigour around what looked to be maybe the dead eyes. I found it difficult to engage with that when they were presented in such quite a pleasing aesthetic. And so, therefore, I felt that we just had a disconnect between concept and the visual aesthetic.
Yeah, Adam, would you like to make a comment, please?
Yeah, very quickly, I enjoy that central placement as well, and that texture we get in the middle. And we look at that texture around the outside, and perhaps the vignette of how it sort of lightens towards the subject perhaps just draws us out of that texture rather than pulling us in. So maybe more consistent treatment of that texture might really push us into that great central subject.
Yeah, excellent feedback and a very good score at 78. Thank you, judges. Let's have our next image, please. All right, always good to double check with our judges. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 74. And I might get a comment, if I can, from Mika. You're right on the average there.
I'd like to commend the photographer on the boldness of the face in the centre of the frame that really jumps out at you. The colour palette really supports that. I feel like to improve the image, and I actually enjoy the solarisation at the top. You've got a lot of different techniques going on here, and a lot of them work really well. I do feel like there's a bit of mixed messaging, and I'm not entirely sure what the overarching message of the image is. So perhaps really trying to nut it down to a stronger message would improve the image.
Yeah, excellent feedback. Thank you. Next image, please. Matt, can I get you to jump on and judge this for Mandarin, please? So often our judges will prefer to step off the panel if they either know an image or they just choose not to, so it's entirely up to them. They want to see every single image come through, get the right score that it deserves, so they make that choice. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 78. And Adam is on 83, and he's going to challenge this. So if we're 5 or more points from the average, we can have an elective challenge. We are all relatively close, yes. You're not...
I really want to reward, it's a striking image, you know, you instantly want to get up and have a look and see what's going on. And I want to really reward the photographer's choice of, I guess, what I see is this message of, you know, we've gone through COVID and we've gone through this disease where we're being told to cover up and do all this sort of stuff. Yet it feels like an X-ray. It feels like we're being looked into the whole time. So you go to the airport, hands in the air, I want to cover all the private parts. I feel like there's this contradiction that we're seeing by looking through the image. And I think the technique supports that. There are some technical choices here that perhaps would stop me from going higher, to really let the image breathe and let me explore around it. But I think that the idea and the concept is strong enough to bring it into silver.
Mika, thank you.
I'm really glad that you have challenged this, because that was what I was missing, the story. I could see the X-ray. To me, it has a puppet-like quality, a marionette. So all of that, I think, is in support of that narrative. So I'm very grateful you've challenged it, and I will come up a few points for that.
Right, thank you. Lisa, would you like to add something?
I gave a lower score. I was in the lower range, and I wasn't convinced, Adam, of the conceptual. Again, I use the word rigour. Every element, obviously, in this category has to earn its place. It doesn't have to stay there. It can be completely manipulated. And I'm not sure about the placement of the head against the arms. And I'm listening, though, to perhaps that story of the hands up and down, because from a medical perspective, I couldn't quite read why those hands were placed where they were. So I appreciate your insight into that.
Thank you. You're right to reply, Adam.
Yeah, it's sort of the medical thing was what got me first, the mask and COVID and everything, where, you know, cover up, keep away from everything. But then we probably all I just went through an airport where you have to stand and it's the most awkward thing in the world. It's not like standing at attention. It's like, oh, you know, it's like, what do we do? Are we doing one thing or are we doing the other? Do you want us to protect ourselves or do you want to see right through it? And even those crossed hands at the bottom, I think, are the ones that kind of give that sort of submissiveness to it. And that protective look as well. I think it's worth rewarding as a low silver just for the concept and to show, you know, to really give us the minimalist kind of view and let us make our own mind up.
All right, thank you, judges. We're currently sitting on 78. Adam, if you could please leave your score at 83, and judges, if you could re-enter your scores, thank you. We have a score of 81. Well done. All right, before we have our next image, let's do another quick judge change. Chris, Julie and Karen, if I could get you to please jump on for Adam, Belinda and Mika. Thank you. Let's have our next image, please. What's already up? Thank you, judges. We have a score of 81. Karen, do you want to make a quick comment on this one, please?
It's a stunning image. I think just to bring it up a little bit, perhaps it got a great score, but the colour palette, maybe the blues and the greens could blend a little more, but well done to the artist.
Yeah, Mandarin, another comment, please.
Just quickly, stunning, almost post-apocalyptic image, because I love seeing the cookie where there's a human in there and I can't see anyone. So it's a very ethereal, interesting landscape. What I'm finding a little bit disconcerting is the clouds. The way they're shaped just feels a little bit too contrived. So just work on that. I think the image would go even further.
Excellent feedback. Thank you, judges. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 76. And if I can, Julie, you're very close to the average. Can I get a comment, please?
Yeah, like a wonderful concept here to work further on. I couldn't quite understand the story, but probably the thing that brought me down the most is just the absolute contrast between the white and the blacks in it. And the boy looking out the curtains, a little bit more detail in there, a little bit more of a light rimming his profile would be absolutely beautiful, given that we've got a profile above. So yeah, a little bit more work in post, but keep up the imagination and creating great things.
Yeah, absolutely. Next image, please. Our judges definitely get excited when they see something unique and different. So something else you can't see if you're watching from home, not trying to make you feel bad at all, is our judges take their jobs very seriously. A lot of them actually carrying notebooks and pens, and they're making notes constantly because they want to provide the best feedback that they can for our entrants. They all give up their time out of their own businesses and busy lives to come and be a part of this. They're not getting paid. They're here purely for the love of what it is that we all do. So if you have entered and you get a couple of judges who make comments and provide feedback, show them some love. We have a score of 83. All right, Chris, you're right on the average. Can I get a comment, please?
Yeah, there's a great story in this image, and you sort of have this little oasis of nature and that greenery, or you know, and you know, as you get further into the background, you can see, you know, the desolation and the industry that's caused the damage. You know, even in the foreground, you can see that story continues. So it really sort of cements that story of that little spot of greenery and all the animals hanging around it. The only thing that I can think of that was sort of stopping me from going higher on the image was there was a bit of muddiness around in the clouds in the top and where they were sort of merging with that white highlight section. I just found that sort of pulling the highlight in the clouds was really pulling me back out of the image, and I wanted to be focused on what was very central there. So that's my only recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mandarin, a quick comment, please.
Just to further quantify what was just said by Chris, when you're looking at your image, squint. It sounds strange, but when you squint, it will help you see where your eye is going. And that highlight in the clouds, we're drawn to that, but there's a couple of birds, but really that's where the story is leading us to. So if you either tone down those clouds or put another element in there to add to the story, that will really lift that image, I feel.
Excellent feedback. Thank you so much, judges. Let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. Just waiting on one more score, and we have a score of 78. And we have a challenge from Karen on 83.
Yeah, I'd love for you guys to consider coming up on this. I mean, the first thing that I saw was this industrial futuristic scene, and it's done in a very unique way, I think, because normally when you have someone create an industrial futuristic scene, you would see something that's a bit destroyed and dark and dingy, and it actually looks like today. It looks like now, but you've got all of these very interesting elements in there. You've got the fishermen there. You've got a number of different stories in there. So it's almost like we're looking at the future, but we're looking at it today. And yeah, I really enjoyed the whole concept and the choices that the artist has made.
Thank you. Lisa, could I get a comment from you, please?
Thank you. I was at the lower end, and I think it was perhaps responding almost the opposite to yourself, Karen, in the sense that I didn't really appreciate or didn't buy into the idea that we've got a very real image. It looks exactly like an image taken at an industrial, on the coastline. There's nothing modified except the addition of the, futuristic apparatus in the water. And I wasn't 100% convinced that was convincing enough for a story for me. But I've heard you, and I can place some value on the real with just a hint of the surreal. The tree in the foreground, it makes it really like it's been framed, like a very standard landscape, cityscape image. And again, every element has to earn its place in this category. And I'm not 100% convinced, but I'm listening.
Thank you. Julie.
I also awarded it a silver level. like the landscape behind the cityscape or industrial is also very constructed as if futuristic, except there's just the fishermen there and there's a lot of bird life. So it gives us hope for the future. And the colour palette also with that just lovely soft sunset, it gives hope for the future with all these modern contraptions and, you know, unusual buildings. So I appreciated that and thought it was, a hopeful future when we all feel like, you know, it's not going to be. Anyway, yeah, so I awarded this a silver. I think it's deserved of it.
All right, and Mandarin, can I get a quick comment from you, please?
Yeah, this is, I love the whole concept. It's, you know, Mad Max, apocalyptic theme, and I agree with what others have said. A couple of points though. I'm enjoying the really sort of almost voyeuristic nature of looking through those trees. I'd love to implore the photographer to commit one way or the other. So the way those trees are cropped, that little sort of wisp of leaves in the centre, there's not enough of it or there's too much. So either remove that or, you know, shoot from a different angle, and also just be very aware of the shadows in the water because it's not convincing, especially that object to the back that's sort of floating in the water, there's no shadow. So just be really aware of how you create shadows when you're compositing.
Excellent feedback. And your right of reply, please, Karen.
Thank you, everyone. Really great comments. And thank you for pointing those things out, Mandarin. I still would love for you to come up. And I think what's been said here is that we often, you know, we've been thrown into a world, if we look outside, it's a beautiful world, but we're also in a world that is being taken over by a lot of craziness and AI and all of that sort of thing. And so I think in this time, in this place, in this year that we're in, this story really does stand out because we're not looking at something that's been copied as in, you know, you look at all those futuristic images and they have a particular feel to them. This has a really a today feel, and as Julie said, it's got some hope in there with the birds, so consider coming up.
Thank you, judges. Next comment, please. No, rewind, Kelly. Karen, if you could please leave your score at 83. Judges, if you could please re-enter your scores. I was trying to do too many things. Take the microphone from you and... Thank you, judges. We have a score of 80. Well done. Great feedback. Let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 79. Julie, you're quite close to the average. Could I get a comment, please?
Yeah, it's intriguing. I'd like to work out the story a little bit more. I found the man on the left a little bit too far to the outside edge, and then the lady in the background is too much intersecting with the main character. So, you know, beautiful tonal range throughout it, an interesting story, but not quite telling me enough.
Thank you. Now, before we have our next image, let's do another quick judge change. If I can get Christopher, Julie and Lisa to jump off, and if I could please get Christopher, Ian, Belinda and Mika to jump on, thank you. All right, thank you, judges. If we're all logged in, let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 77. And you're all really quite close there. Christopher, Ian, can I get a comment from you, please?
I'm an absolute fan of typography where you basically pick a subject and that's all you shoot. You shoot it repeatedly, whether it's medical instruments, medical gear, but the variety is just not there. In fact, if you're going to present us with 8 photos, there's got to be a movement or something through the 8. So I can see the second line being the star, the hero line. The line below it diminishes that, and then the line below that just repeats it. So I think you've got to reduce the number of photos in your overall effect.
Quick comment, please, Mika. Sorry, because you put a hand up.
I also just want to compliment the photographer because from a distance it really looked like jewellery or handbags and the colours were really vivid and bright, and I think you've probably presented us with something in a way that we certainly haven't seen before, and it's different and unique, and for that, that's I want to say congrats.
Yeah, well done. Thank you, judges. Next image, please. Adam, could I please get you to step on for Mika? Again, there are sometimes instances where our judges prefer to step off for a particular image, and that's why we have lots of judges fresh and ready on that on the bench, ready to go. I don't want to call them bench warmers. But it is chilly, so. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 87. And Christopher Ian is on 90. We're going to have a challenge. So hang on just one second. Let me just explain the process here. So this becomes a panel mentor challenge, but I'm going to ask you to speak first because you are on 90.
I thought this was certainly appropriate to be in that category. Your skill set is just extraordinary. Your storytelling is also extraordinary. So let's talk about the print. It's almost the Last Supper with your Christ figure, the third frame from the right. All the trees in reverence to the Christ figure. It's brilliant. You've even given it a slightly different tonality, a slightly different contrast range. So there is no hint that it's leaning forward of the subject and behind it are the disciples. I just can look at each of these images and love them. But then as a whole, this is where construct works because it's contributing to the Last Supper effect, where the reverend image is getting its attention from its subjects.
All right. Karen, could I get a comment from you, please?
I'm glad that you shared that, Christopher, because the story is something that I was not quite there with, but you've given some great insight there. And what I thought was excellent, it's not just the image itself, but it's the framing. The treatment and the framing around the edge is really unique, and it helps pull you into the image as well. So it's as though we are looking at a print, even though we are looking at something digital on the ASO monitor.
All right. Actually, Mandarin's right next to you, so we'll get a comment and then we'll come down to you, Adam.
Yeah, I'm busting. This is an absolutely exquisite image, and I scored it a very high silver. I feel like maybe I was a little bit mean, but I'll tell you why I didn't go into the gold in this instance. The ethereal, beautiful, subtle depth of those trees to the left and the right, you know, going through that foggy, misty background are absolutely stunning. The globe in the centre, it reads as a round spherical object, and yet it is very flat in its nature. I wish there was a little bit more depth in that, whether that be a little bit deeper in tone around the edge with a subtle highlight towards the centre, just to give it more of a spherical three-dimensional feel, just very subtly, but that would have lifted my score much higher.
All right. Adam, yeah. No, we were going to get a comment there from Adam, but he's just nodded in agreement with everything that's already been said here. Now, we don't have a right of reply because this is a panel mentors challenge. So if I can, judges, get you to please review the image and your scoring criteria if need be, and then re-enter your scores. Thank you. So we have lots of processes here as judges and panel mentors to make sure that we give every image a fighting chance to get the best score that it can. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 89. Well done. Thank you, judges. Let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 83. And we have Mika on a score of 89 who's going to challenge this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the level of detail and the control of light in this image. In a forest scene like this, the original capture would probably be very much, it's possibly going to be quite light and dark. We can see the detail in every area of this. So just for that, I think the skill of the photographer is evident here. What I'm really enjoying though is the story and the uniqueness and the non-stereotypical depiction of a rural lifestyle. This is probably a native forest, but it's giving the depiction of a rural farming scene. We've got a farmer who appears to be a farmer who's got washing on the line, and there's a horse, and there's someone doing something in the foreground, and it's just a snapshot of what seems to be everyday life, and yet it's told in this fairy tale fantasy type, moody, well-lit scene. It's like the everyday, but it's magical, if that makes sense. And I'm really buying into it, I'm really believing it, so I'd really like to hear what others have to say, and perhaps address some concerns people have.
Yeah. Belinda, can I get a comment from you, please?
Yeah, sure. Look, I was at the other end. I was actually on 78. Maybe I was a little bit stingy, but there was a few reasons for it. While I agree with you with the attention to detail with the shadows and the highlights and the lighting of the image, I'm feeling like the person in the foreground is very big in comparison to that horse. And I know they're supposed to be in the foreground closer to us than the horse, but it feels like he's quite large, he or she. And then the sun up the top there, I understand that this happens in forests, but we're in a category where you can control everything, and I feel like that just keeps taking my eye straight up to and out of the image where all the detail and the scene is actually happening. So if you can address some of those issues, I'd be happy to listen.
Okay. Mandarin, can I get a comment from you, please?
Thank you. Thanks. This is absolutely a superb image, and I was on a silver and I really wanted to go up much higher, but what held me back were a few things that have already been mentioned, but in particular that central figure. When you go up close, it feels like that figure is slightly over-sharpened in comparison to the rest of the image, to try and draw our attention, our eye to it, so I understand that, but it just makes it a little bit unbelievable. Further to that, when you're styling an image, just be very aware of the garments that you have the people wear, because I think there's a little hat on the individual and it just sort of visually crushes their head, so it just looks quite odd. And the last point is the position of the horse is fine, but there's a piece of the trunk of the tree sort of jutting out over the rear leg, which looks really strange. So elements like that just give it a kind of an odd edge. I also wonder if it would have been nicer as more of a letterbox panorama and crop off some of that top edge and even some of the right.
Thank you. Christopher, and you've put your hand up?
I'm going to say why the sun's there. The sun's there because my farm's in this area. It's burning off the morning haze. That's the reason it's there. It's still inside would be the temperature it was overnight of 8 degrees, but that's actually the sun, not warming the sun, warming you up. It's actually burning off the haze. I just think you need to lose the right quarter so the tree is not as expansive as it is. And even the subjects, I just like the man standing looking out.
Thank you. Mika, you're right to reply.
Yeah, thank you everyone. I really appreciate what you've seen. Belinda, in terms of the sizing, I must admit I didn't notice that sizing difference, and I can see what you're saying. But I still think if that fellow was to run across and jump on the horse, I wouldn't feel like the horse was going to be crushed by the fellow. So I think that's small, but I hear that. In terms of the sun, I agree with Christopher. I feel like that sun is it helps to establish the place, it helps to establish the mood, and it gives that ethereal light quality, that kind of soft light quality that I think is quite believable. Mandarin, the hat, I have to agree with you on that it does make his head disappear into the background a little. And in terms of the crop, I think what the photographer has done is give us the breathing room and the space and the feeling of the forest, and that's a big part of this story. So I actually feel like I'm not so affected by that, but I appreciate that comment. And I'm not asking for gold here, but I am on a high silver, and I do feel that it's worthy of at least a few more points coming up.
Thank you, judges. We're currently at 83. If you could please re-enter your scores. Mika keeping yours at 89. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 86. I have no doubt the photographer is going to be very grateful for that conversation. Well done. Now, before we move on to our next image, we're going to have another quick judge change. If I could please get Belinda, Mika, and Mika, Karen, and Mandarin to jump off. Trying to give everybody a great opportunity to be a part of this panel. Adam, Matt, and Kelly Barker to jump on. Thank you. Yes. There isn't, but you can just let me know. Just a little hand up and maybe just going, no, mouthing the word. But if anyone at any point in time feels like they would like to step off because they might know the image, that's always the option there as well, which is great. All right, are we ready to rock and roll? We're all locked in? Let's have our next image, please. Here's an interesting question for our people following along at home. We have a what do you call this? A QR code. That's how I'm up to date with technology. Our judges would love to try and scan this with their phones. I'm actually going to say no, because we're judging the image that's in front of us. And by all means, after the scores have been delivered, if you feel that you would like to scan this, go for it. I love being thrown curveballs. Not just by our entrants, but also by our judges. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 82. And Matt, you're right on the average. Can I get a comment, please? And our scribe, Fiona, has scanned it and it doesn't do anything. Note to entrant if you're not here in person listening online. If you want to excite your judges even further.
Yeah, well, it's a very novel presentation of a QR code. Potentially could be linked to a client gallery or something, which could be a lot of fun for those people. I think what would have elevated it higher is if there was a bit more variation, particularly in the large squares where we have the mirrored frames at the top right and left. A little bit more variation in not very obvious places would lift it.
Great feedback. Which bride wouldn't love to be a QR code? Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 77. And you're all relatively close there. Belinda, you're right on the average. Could I get a comment, please?
Sure. Look, this image is quite impactful when it first pops up, and it seems to be executed quite well. It's very detailed. For me, I am missing the story. I can see that it's medical gear, and I think, when you decide to curate your images to enter these competitions, perhaps when they are similar, it can lose its impact. So that's just something to think about for the photographer.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Thank you very much. That's great feedback. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 74. I might get a comment if I can. Matt, actually, you put your hand up. There we go. Our judges often want to make a comment. That's excellent.
Yeah, the image has visual impact and interest. However, I feel like the techniques used aren't mirrored in the appearance of the bride. And perhaps if you use this technique with a subject that kind of lent into those techniques emotionally, perhaps they're in disarray or they're a little bit confused, that would create an image that could rate quite highly.
Thank you for your feedback. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 82. And we have Christopher Ian on a challenge at 90. Thank you.
I thought I'd be sitting here with a lot of fellow travellers, and I didn't want to be getting too excited by something that's extraordinary and someone to jump ahead of me at 94 or 95. This is a two-dimensional perception on an ISO screen, and yet I can feel the folds of paper because the dye is worn off either side of that fold, as if somehow you've actually printed this and then folded it so the inks have slipped. And it looks like it's been wrapped like that for 80 years or so that the dyes really have slipped off and that there's creases that have perished your photo. It's beautifully three-dimensional. And to think of this technique, we've talked about previous techniques that weren't in tune with what the subject is. This is a technique like a Japanese scrolled painting. It's perfectly in keeping with what you're trying to do. Because you're trying to create that sort of elements, the Japanese, where they read from bottom right to top left. And it's perfect.
All right, thank you. Kelly, can I get a comment from you, please?
Sure. I'm certainly listening because I didn't see a lot of that to start with. I'm really enjoying that it's indicative of an alternative process, and I can very much see that could really, really work for this image, but the potential, I think, has just been not quite achieved. The image itself, taken away the technique, I do feel is a little wanting, for want of a better word. There's depth where I need, there's a lack of depth where I need there to be depth. It's not taking me through the image. I feel it's really very flat for something that's got so much texture and depth to it, and this image isn't portraying that to me. The crop itself too, again, does lend itself to the technique if it is an alternative process. However, for the actual image, I feel there could be a different crop and arrangement. Yeah, I'd like to hear more.
Adam, thank you.
Yeah, I got the idea of that process and that blind that almost leads us, unrolls us towards the vista, and I appreciated that, though I felt the vista was sort of a little, it's resolved, but it doesn't have that development, from the branch on the right that feels a little tight on the right-hand side in amongst this great expanse to sort of the nothing that gets us, and we resolve at the top, but I don't feel that kind of investment in the overall narrative, apart from that initial impact of that agent. So that I was sort of sitting in mid-silver, and I kind of need a bit of explanation to really push me up into that gold range.
And Matt, do you have anything you'd like to contribute before we go back to Christopher?
I actually don't mind the tightness of the branch on the right. I feel like it adds a little bit of tension in what could otherwise be a very overly calm scene. I think that does add something. I found that the pattern's quite beautiful towards the top of the frame, but down where they're intersecting with the grasses, it almost feels like I'm seeing cloning, and I'm not seeing cloning, but it just gives the appearance of that, just because of the repetition.
And your right of reply, Christopher.
I actually got up several times because I thought, is that writing, which you'd expect in a Japanese lithograph, in the top, remember it's going from bottom right to top left, it's in the top left, but it's not. But that's actually, why would it be there? Well, I think it's to infer that. I just think this has the tonality, the style of a Japanese woodcut that's been folded up and creased in a book for 80 years. I'm just amazed you can get three-dimensional depth off an ISO screen like this. This is amazing. It's a flat screen.
All right, we are currently sitting at an 82. Christopher, if you could please keep your score at 90. Judges, if you could re-enter your scores, thank you. And we have movement, an 86. Very valuable feedback from all of our judges there. Thank you so much. Next image, please. All right, if a couple of our judges, Mika and Chris, if you would like to go and get some morning tea, it's being served in the kitchen area. And we're going to do another quick change, in a second, yeah. But Mika and Chris, if you could go. And Julie. Yeah. Sorry. Keeping our judges hydrated and fueled. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 74. Kelly, you're very close to the average. Could I get a comment from you, please?
Sure. Conceptually, I feel the photographer should really sort of explore this a bit further. There's sort of a lot of story in here that really could be actually sort of more explored. The texture and the contrast and the overall feel is a little conflicting with the sensual nature of the main subject, and I think that could be resolved a little better.
Thank you, judges. We might do another quick change before we have our next image. If I could please get Belinda and Christopher, Ian and Matt to jump off, please. Keeping everybody moving here. And if I could have Mandarin, Lisa and Karen back on, thank you. And if you've just come off the panel, please go grab some morning tea in the kitchen area and then come back and see us. All right, thank you, judges. If we're all logged in, we can have our next image, please. All right, if you are just joining us, one of the reasons that we do our judge change is to keep everybody on their toes, but all of our judges love being here, they love judging, so we want to give them as much time on the panel as we possibly can and keep them nice and fresh as well. So our judges are viewing the images on an AZO monitor. AZO is also our category sponsor. So the winner of the creative division, not necessarily this category, will win a ColorEdge CS 24-inch monitor worth over $1,600. That's an incredible prize. Not that we enter for the prizes. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 72. And I might get a comment, if I can, from you, Adam. Thank you.
Yeah, well done to the entrant to really trying to give us something with impact and trying to create a concept and story, and it's worth exploring, I think. Watch the range of contrast we have in that very strong black and white, and then we really lower the contrast in where the section of the movement kind of pulls us away from that central figure. And then just think about the way you place images and where they sit within the actual overall three-dimensionality of the frame. Should it go over the top? Should it come underneath some of the elements? Where we place those images will help the believability and accentuate that story.
Very valuable feedback. Thank you. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 80. Karen, yeah, can I get a comment from you? You're very close to the score.
Yeah, absolutely. This is really an exceptional piece, looking at it from the top section down to about the middle. And I think to bring it up, and I think there's a chance that it could go up quite a bit higher, is this is a composite category. Simplify, take some of the characters out, take some of the extra detail out, the signage, really simplify that bottom section, really think about what you're doing at the bottom, because that top section is brilliant.
Thank you very much. Great feedback. Next image, please. Just want to make a note. Mika, can I get you to jump on, please, for Mandarin? Yeah, and Lisa, could Christopher Ian, can I get you to jump on for Lisa? Is that okay? Thank you, judges. We have a score of 78. And you're all really, really close to the average there. Adam, yes, a quick comment, please.
Again, a great explanation of the technique and the texture and the sort of ethereal nature. It's an issue of balance here for me, I think, and it's not just as far as the crop, it feels a little bit sort of leaning to one side or sort of one to that. But even in the colour and the palette choices, it just doesn't play with the colours and find one that maybe balances a little bit more across, in that sort of orderly arrangement that we have.
Yeah, a really quick comment.
The colours that are used here are very childlike and enjoyable, and I think there's a bit of a miscommunication between the seriousness of what you're conveying with the medical costumes and the playfulness of the colour, and I think that mixed messaging makes it confusing to interpret the image.
Christopher, very quick.
I believe there's a cameo photo in the middle image, in the far left image. Keep those little things there so we get interested in looking at your images, because I'm believing I'm seeing a human face in there.
Thank you for your feedback. Excellent. Christopher and Mika, if you could jump back off, and Mandarin Elisa come back on. Very valuable feedback. Let's have our next image, please, judges. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 87. And we have Karen on 96 who's going to challenge this.
Yes, I am going to challenge it. It's exceptional craftsmanship on the editing and the colour tonality and the smirk on the face, the capture of the man there, the expression, everything is carrying this through. But as you go in deeper and you look at what is this story? Okay, obviously it's a genie in a bottle, but the bottle looks like an alcoholic bottle. It looks like this genie's coming out, in wisps. And what is this story telling? And there could be a number of different interpretations. But one of the ones that I landed on was, perhaps, if maybe you're the partner of this man and he's not really as as impressive as you would like him to be, but if you're drinking out of that bottle, perhaps he becomes more like a genie. So I don't know. I'm sure you can come up with a few stories too.
Love it. Lisa, could I get a comment from you, please?
I think it's technically fantastic, and the compositing skills are brilliant. I cannot move past the fact that I can't reconcile the nature of that bottle, the word genie on it, and I don't know what that floor surface is. For me, conceptually, that has no connection with the rest of the frame. I want to hear what it could be, because if is it the bottom of a pool, I just don't know what it is. And that, for me, Karen, I couldn't move past, but I'm listening because technically it is brilliant. So I'll pass that on. Adam?
Let's go Adam, and then we'll come back down to Mandarin.
Yeah, look, I sort of read that initial kind of impact. We all laugh, the perfect man comes out of a beer bottle and this is the man of your dreams kind of thing. Technically, yes, but that's where I stopped. It's that sort of, that little special sauce, and we're talking about exceptional and exceptional visual communication. And technically, yes, it's well done, but we're in a compositing section where we're rewarding things for being well done. To get to gold, though, I think I need more than that literal kind of impact that we get. The beer bottle is nice, gives us a few things, but I need to hear more to get up into gold. I think I'm close, though.
All right. Mandarin.
I'm on 88. This image is exquisite, and I'm so glad you've challenged this, Karen, so that we can talk about this. The only thing that held me back from going into gold was how that smoke streak is resolved. It sort of starts off fairly believable out of the bottle, and then there's a gap, and there's like little lines, and also around the genie. I feel like that is not as believable. It doesn't quite work as well as I had hoped. However, every other element in this image is absolutely stunning, so it won't take much for me to go up higher.
And your right of reply, please.
Thank you, everyone. All right, just starting with that flooring, I would say that looks like a kitchen floor to me, and that would be the exact place that this genie and the whole story would play out. So that makes a whole lot of sense to me. The detail of having genie written on the bottle instead of just any sort of label, they've gone to that extra extent, and the smoke is realistic in that it's not just sort of a smudged on, brushed on smoke. Someone's photographed that smoke and they've placed it there. It's literally smoke. I don't think I can see any repetition there. But in terms of it being believable, this is a genie coming out of a bottle. So let's come up.
All right, thank you, judges. We're currently sitting at 87. If you could please keep your score at 96, Karen, and judges, if you could just have another look, take your time, and then revisit your scoring criteria if need be before providing your scores. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 90. Great discussions. Alrighty, let's have our next image, please. Judges, taking in every pixel on this ASO monitor. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 86. And we have a challenge from Kelly on 93.
Oh, I just got excited. Fantastic image. Okay. I just need to get my thoughts straight now. The lighting is exceptional and so just perfect for all the narrative that's in this. There's so much story you can read into this. Let's just start with some of the obvious. He's got a circular head. There's one tiny circular hole there. There's the circular reference in the moon. Perhaps he feels like he doesn't belong. He's coming from another world, that sort of thing. Maybe he's coming into his own. He's braced as if he's about to jump or if he's about to take on the world. So there's a sense of strength and not arrogance, but confidence. And that's indicative of all the lighting and all the technical details. let's just take it a little step further. Obviously, the rectangular and angular world he's about to enter or about to come into is not as straight as perhaps society would have you see it. There are some straight points, but obviously there's some tips, there's some leanings. There's just so much into this you can read into narrative. I don't know why I actually didn't go higher. I'm on 93. Everything just this just ticks all the boxes. Visually exciting. It's impactful. It's really got everything. So I'd love to hear. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Mandarin.
It's amazing. It's a square peg in a round hole scenario. That's the first thing I thought of when I looked at it. I congratulate the photographer on... I'm one of these people that loves detail in highlights and shadows, and I think you've really nailed that, no pun intended, where it's needed. So there is beautiful detail in that main block with the circle. I scored it a silver, 83, and the reason why I didn't go up higher, even though the composition is quite lovely, you've got leading lines and you've got, if you squint, you can really see how all the shapes lead back to either the moon or the little figure. I'm trying to understand the story of that little moon in front of the moon, and I'm sure it's connected somehow. That, and also there is quite a blank space above the little guy to the sort of middle top, and I kind of wonder if there could have been an extra block in that space.
Thank you, Adam.
I think you said it. I think it's the hole. It's the hole in the back. There's the square, all these square pegs. And I kind of saw it as this person coming from the dark, and they've done something, they've fixed something. They're standing at the next challenge going, rightio, look at all this mess here. We've got to put all these things back together. I've already done it over here. There's the beautiful shape, the classical shape that we enjoy. Here's all the rubbish and the blocks that we've got to fit back into this. And it just gives a sense of journey, I think, is that like there was where we came from, and here's the next logical step in the part. It is, the figure has so much personality, I think, that pose, and for something that's obviously so otherworldly, it's not even robot-like. It's just this person going, I am determined, and all those shapes mirror it. I think it's, well worthy of gold.
All right, judges. Kelly, if I can get a right of reply, please.
Yeah, look, you're so much more articulate than I am when I get excited. But that is exactly what it is. That depth is where he's coming from, and, potentially putting that past behind him or her or they. Let's just, moving forward, tackling and with confidence, tackling what's about to happen. And look, I sort of see it as a bit of a coming of age type. I'm coming into my own, or I'm finding myself, but I do also love that concept of tackling something further on. I think everything just sums it up, and there's such a nice little tie between the hole in the moon and the hole in that front block. Everything just ties in nicely. The composition is so strong. That lighting is just phenomenal for all the concept behind it. I'd love to see this in at least the gold range somewhere.
Thank you, judges. Thank you, Kelly. If you could keep your score at 93. And judges, if you could please re-enter your scores. And we have a 92. All right, these discussions are what it's all about. All right, we're going to have a quick judge change before we move on to our next image, please. If I can get to come onto the panel, Chris, Julie and Mika. And if I can please have Lisa, Mandarin and Adam jump off. Yeah, and if you want to go grab some morning tea, please do so. Yep. All right, thank you, judges. Let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 86. Julie's hand straight up on 92. Let's go with this challenge.
Yeah, this is like you're at the theatre and you're watching a ballet. These giraffes are in all these beautiful poses as if ballerinas across the stage. They're beautifully lit, it's beautifully constructed. They're all in these beautifully different, elegantly creative and dance-like poses. It could be a mating ritual, and then they're walking off into their life together. There's a lot you could see within it. It's got a gorgeous texture over it and a beautiful colour palette that really complements the images. There's the applicable shadows underneath. And yeah, just really stunning animals, but very elegantly told. So I judge this as a gold because I do feel it's superbly done with just a beautiful. There doesn't have to be a major story, it's just very dance-like and has a beautiful motion.
Thank
Let's
you,
go for
Julie.
gold. Only a few more points.
Mika, comment.
So I scored this 77, and what I am missing from this scene is an overall reason for these individual couples to be doing what they're doing. I'm seeing the interaction between the couples, but I'm not seeing why this performance is occurring. I do like the performance lighting. I do feel that the texture is a little detracting for me, and also I found that there were some areas underneath their legs where the background is coming through, and I do feel if we're talking about gold, I definitely need to point that out because I do find those branches, those trees between their legs, that should be off in the background, not part of the performance. I think the compositing has been done really well, but yeah, the directionality as well, the couple at the back, that their necks are reaching out of the frame. If I can understand why they're doing what they're doing as a group rather than having one couple that we admire as a couple, I'd be willing to find some more points, but I'm quite comfortable where I am at the moment.
Thank you, Mika. Chris.
Thanks, Mika. I think I'm going to try and help you out because I see that as one couple in a progression through a scene rather than as 5 separate couples. So that was my initial view. I saw a couple walking in, and I'm going to sort of humanize them or whatever, but then they're having a bit of a snuggle and a hug as they're walking along, and being a bit playful with each other, and then they continue on their journey. So that's what I saw in terms of the central characters. I hadn't spotted and I will go back and have a look at the foliage that you were talking about, but I would probably score the landscape in its own a high silver. I think it's phenomenally well done in the background itself, and then you've got this beautiful story of a couple in love walking through their environment.
Your right of reply, please, Julie.
Thanks. Just to address the foliage coming into it, I think that makes it then more real. It's not just the background. They've got the little branches down between their legs in a couple of places, so that brings them back into the scenery. And the texture on the background, like a ballet, they'll often have textured backgrounds. It's all part of the drama in the back scene. But in this case, it is just so beautiful, it's just so aesthetic, and it's just so beautiful. So it is a ritual with the giraffes, the neck slapping, the sniffing of the groin, the cuddle, and then they move on after that. So I think it tells a really beautiful, poetically dance-like story of these gorgeous giraffes. So we're on at 86. I'd like you to go to gold, please.
Thank you, Julie. If you could keep your score at 92, and judges, if you could please re-enter your scores. Just a minute. Here we go. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 89. In these categories, every point counts. Thank you. Let's have our next image, please. As I said, every point counts for our entrance. The top 5 from each category go through to be judged again, not like this, but to choose the winners of the category. And that is by secret ballot. As I've mentioned a couple of times, you may have missed it. ASO are our category sponsor for the photographic artist category that we're judging right now. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 79. Kelly, you're right on the average there. Can I get a comment, please?
This is a really a gorgeous representation of a beautiful little family at play, and I really enjoyed that part. The differentiation between each character was a little lacking, so I would have loved to have seen a little bit more in between. And a reference or some sort of placement of something, I feel like it's just sort of floating, give it a little bit of context or give them a little bit of context, but the playfulness between them is really quite lovely.
Yeah, and a quick comment, please, Karen. Yeah. Excellent.
Just a quick one there. I think you mentioned the repetition, but just be careful of repeating elements. So the butterflies look to be the same, and the two birds look to be the same. They might be slightly different. So yeah, just work on some variance in that.
Excellent. Thank you, judges. We're going to do another quick judge change. Kelly and Karen, if I could get you to jump off for Matt and Belinda, that would be amazing. Whilst we get our next image, please. Morning tea. Yeah, go get some morning tea. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 83. And we have a challenge from Matt on 88.
Yeah, so I scored this in the higher silvers, and I think that's probably where it deserves to sit. The use of texture in this is absolutely beautiful. It has an ethereal feel. The light directs us exactly where we want to look in the scene. However, it doesn't reveal everything. So it's got the beautiful bird up in the tree there. That's a little bit more subtle. But then down in the lower left, you actually see more of a vast landscape that's hinted at. On the right, you kind of see a sense that maybe this is a bit of a peninsula sort of thing jutting out over that landscape, because you have the grasses on the right-hand edge there that shift to this sense of scale. So I just think it's a gorgeously put together landscape, and even though it's asymmetrical, it's got a lovely balance to it as well.
All right, Chris, can I get a comment from you, please?
Yeah, I scored this as 79, Matt, and I think that the reason I was down there rather than up where you are is there's a grittiness to the sky and the foreground, which was interrupting that, you know, that sort of that soft feel to the image, and that's the only thing. And I think perhaps I should be up a bit. So you've definitely given me some stuff to think about, but that was the main thing that was interrupting my getting that emotive connection to the image.
All right, Julie, can I get a comment from you, please?
Yeah, Matt, I agree with what you were saying. It's beautifully done, a beautiful tonal range. Sorry, I do not really have anything more to add. I could probably go up a few points if I can add that.
Yeah, Mika.
I had the same problem as Chris, but what I do want to say in support of the image is I think it's very cleverly crafted to convey an at-sea image where it's actually on the land and in the sky all at the same time. I do think that's quite clever.
Excellent. Right of reply, please, Matt.
Thank you. So I'm asking for just a few more points. Let's get it up there a bit in terms of the texture. I see this as kind of like a bit more of a romantic memory of a landscape. And I feel that's where the texture takes you. So this isn't trying to portray itself as I am looking at a landscape and I'm photographing it and this is the real scene. This is like a memory of a landscape and how you think about that place. And that's what it's trying to capture, not the reality, but the feeling of it.
All right, judges, we're on 83. We're asking for a few more points there. If you could please re-enter your scores. And we have a score of 85. Great conversation. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 81. Yeah, Matt put his hand up. Let's get a comment, please.
Yeah, the photographer's done really well to create almost like a dystopian alternate universe here where security is kind of taking over everything. I think in terms of improving it, there seems to be a robot that's maybe being built in the facility in the background, and then there's a robot in the foreground that looks like it's patrolling, but they're a little close together. So it's hard to differentiate those two forms from each other, and also perhaps the power line on the left. But it's a really cool universe that you're creating here.
Excellent feedback. Thank you, judges. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 74. If I could please get a comment from Belinda. No? Matt? Yeah, go for it.
So I think there's a really interesting play with light going on in this photograph. I think the tricky thing for us is just understanding how these elements fit together to tell a story about the person. And that left me judging it based on the photographic lighting, and on the portrait in the top left, it kind of just fades into a muddy brown rather than showing perhaps the detail of the hair and the forehead. But overall, it's a really interesting idea.
Thank you for your feedback. Great comments. Let's have our next image, please. We're judging the digital photographic artist category, where composites are allowed. And we are definitely honouring unique creativity in this category. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 72. Mika, you're right on the average there. Can I get a comment, please?
I think the photographer has really tried to play with an image of a landscape and give us some big eyes and give us a bit of interest there. I think a little problematic is the brightness of those highlights. We're missing a bit of texture, and it feels like the texture has been, that there's been an attempt to emphasise the texture, perhaps using a filter that I don't think on the bark that is not part of the rest of the photograph. So there's this a little bit of disconnect there. So for the photographer, perhaps working a little bit more with contrast and ensuring that the original capture has the detail in the bright areas, I think that would assist.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you very much. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 81. And Julie on 88 with a challenge.
Yeah, this is a higher silver than 81. This is, again, beautifully done, beautifully lit, and the colour palette, it's just gorgeous. This would just look superb on a wall. But then it's the prancing one up the front saying, look at me, and the others are just looking away and not even interested. One's, got its head tucked up its wing. So, yeah, again, it's got a story within these creatures that are absolutely beautiful, beautifully placed in a landscape, gorgeous colour palette that goes with them, with the texture that just helps accentuate it. And I just think it's a lovely little vignette into their life, which is creative and deserved more than 81.
Chris, could I get a comment from you, please?
Yeah, thanks for that, Julie. I was on 75, so I was a bit away from you, and the main reason was I was sort of having a problem with scale in the image. I don't quite know what it is, but the relationship between the birds and the foliage in the foreground, it just wasn't quite gelling for me, and I don't know if that's deliberate. I don't know if it's just my eyes and I'm misreading it, but that was my takeaway from it.
All right, Matt?
Yeah, I liked it for the story and gave it a commendation based on that. I felt like it was like there's always one that's left still getting ready before they go out. So this one on the left is grooming itself. But in terms of the technicality of it, I felt like the legs weren't convincingly composited into that environment. There were a few little twigs and things which were transparent where you could see the legs behind in front of, through the little twigs. So I felt like there needed to be a little bit more attention to detail in those spaces. And also where there's a vignette around the frame, it introduces a bit of noise that's a bit gritty and works against that beautiful colour palette. So those are the things that held me back.
Mika.
I similarly really enjoyed the theatricality of this and the getting ready aspect and the moving on. The thing that I couldn't move past was that the two heads of the second and the fourth flamingo are exactly the same angle, the same lighting. And I feel like at this level of composites, it's really important to have that variability of all of the animals. So if there's a reason for that, great.
Thank you. And your right of reply, please, Julie.
I'll answer that one first. I'm sure if you saw a flock of flamingos, there'd be two looking at you in the same direction. These birds, yes, there is an incongruence between the size of the trees and the birds, but these birds to me are a bit larger than life in that if I go to Africa, I seriously want to see these birds and see if two look at me in the same direction. But it's a beautiful image, and I do think it's worthy of a few more points than 81.
Thank you, judges. Julie, we are currently on 81. Julie, if you could keep your score at 88, and if you could re-enter your scores. And we have stayed at 81. Thank you, judges. Great feedback. Next image, please. Random, I once stayed in a hotel in China and I couldn't work out what the noise was. I opened up the window and there was a flock of flamingos in China. And they weren't wild. It was a very odd hotel. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 83. Well done. And you are all relatively close there. Matt, can I get a comment, please?
Yeah, so I scored this into the silver as well. It's a beautiful architectural image, a contrast between those spires and then the ethereal clouds above. However, in terms of improvement, you've got these red areas down the bottom, and they're telling me that the bottom right-hand corner is very important and the hood over the figure is very important, but they're not really giving us more information or story.
All right, excellent feedback. All right, before we have our next image, I might do another quick judge change. Julie, Mika and Chris, if I could get Adam, Mandarin and Lisa to join us on the panel, please. And we'll have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 77. Yeah, Adam has his hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful bit of either seeing or construction or however we've got of the passage of time and, you know, these events that have happened and just sort of torn down from history. I feel like to lift it, we really want that nugget, that's something to focus in on. We sort of go around the image looking for it. I never feel like we're quite resolved or rewarded, and that's the thing that will bring us up higher into the next range. But, you know, well seen, well constructed.
Thank you, Adam. Let's have our next image, please. Karen, can I get you to jump on for Mandarin, please? We're starting to see more bodies join us here at the Photography Studies College in Melbourne. They've been such an incredible host for us for the last couple of years. We literally come in and take over, and they still have classes going on while we're here. And it's an exciting venue. Highly encourage anybody in the area to come and have a look or enrol in some of their courses. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 81. And Adam, who is currently on 86 with a challenge.
There's a reminiscence and a sort of almost a homage to that famous, like the diner image. You know, we all sort of recognise that straight away. Yeah, it has a completely different feel to it. There's a mystery and everything. You know, there's enough information, but not the literal information. The car lights in the background, the figures inside. What are they doing? And then there's a mirroring almost. You know, we're not quite sure. We've got the person arriving, and they're not quite sure what's going on. We've got the bird arriving, and they're kind of arriving to a scene that you're not quite sure what's going on. And then there's a little guard animal sort of looking back out right at the top there. All these little nuggets sort of mean, well, what's going on? Is it really important in there? You know, what's going on? Everything focuses to that moment, and there's nothing literal about it, but it's really, it's evocative. It's got, it's got the texture of the feeling, and it brings us to that point. I think it's worth raising up just for that narrative that's provided through everything shown.
Thank you. Karen, can I come to you, please?
Yeah, I saw all of that narrative, Adam. Thank you for drawing attention to it all. I think the thing that I really struggled with bringing it up, because I did score it quite a bit lower, was the choice of colour. I think in a composite category, we have really the opportunity to really push an image and choose the colour palette and choose the tonal range and, you know, remove things that maybe are not important, like a bus stop and things in the background that might be drawing our attention away from what's needed to be there. So I feel that if it was just approached a bit more in post-production, it could come right up for me.
And Matt, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I feel the image speaks to kind of a duality of life, of the warmth inside and the cold outside on the streets. However, there was a little detail that kind of pulled me out of that world with the electricity or utility box on the left. The line of the building actually goes through that, where they've tried to composite it in, but it's got a bit of see-through there. So just like really attention to detail when you're dropping those things in, and no matter how trivial the detail is, making sure it's spot on, because that's the thing that can shatter the world or the perception.
Right. Belinda, did you want to add anything to this conversation? Yeah, and Adam, your right of reply, please.
Yeah, I think if the technical, there are parts that are perhaps a little brighter or a little not as well sort of perhaps handled, that would have pushed me even higher, because there's still the evocative. And I find the palette in the background gives us everything. We've got the red of the brake light, and then there's the red and blue. Is it danger? Is it police? Is it mystery? The warmth inside is exactly, I think, where we need to rest, and it's that evocation and the way it sort of shines a light on those things outside. It doesn't reveal anything. It doesn't. The expression doesn't sort of say a wanting or a sad. It's that in between that lets us interpret that, and I think. I'm asking you to come up a few points into middle silver to reward that sort of evocative nature of what we're getting here.
All right, thank you, judges. We're currently on 81. If you could keep your score at 86. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 82. All right, every point counts. And Karen, if you could jump off back off and let Miranda in come back on. We'll have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. All right, we have a score of 81. Well done. Mandarin, you're right on the average there. Can I get a comment, please?
This is a really cool image. I think it's a narrative on consumerism. It looks like there's some bank logos perhaps up the top. It looks like the big fish eating the little fish with the dollar sign there. So it's quite intriguing. There's a bit of Dada-esque there. The reason I didn't go higher, I was on silver, was I just needed a little bit more resolution in what the different elements were. I knew that they all added to the story, but I couldn't quite understand what every element was.
Thank you, excellent feedback. Before we have our next image, we'll do another change. Belinda and Matt, if I could get you to jump off, please, for Karen and Christopher Ian. Thank you, judges. And while you're logging in, we might get our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 81. And we have Lisa on 88 with a challenge.
I've really responded to the gentleness, the symmetry without it being symmetrical. So we have some movement. We're not balanced. We have some, not tension, but we have some sense of dynamism. But what really engaged me was the actual subject matter, how, we're specimen type language where we have the circles, but also if anyone's been to the old grave sites where we have the glass domes with the flowers inside them. And I found that quite inspiring, and hence that was the rationale for the texture. So I scored an 88. I'm asking us to move just to that higher silver because I think there's some symbolism here, and I think it's been really well presented and really well handled technically, and I'm asking my judges to join me with a few extra points.
Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, there's some interesting points you make there, and the specimen thing, it has me interested. It gets me. I was on 78. I think it's a well-presented image that I do wonder narratively why about the presentation, why the different shapes, but I can sort of see that order within disorder. I think it was just sort of looking into each image and whether I was as rewarded and whether I sort of continued through the image when I got to as each image was placed. And I'm thinking, well, why is that there? Why am I looking at? Well, how do they connect to each other? Am I just sort of seeing 12 connected image or 11 connected images, or is there something? Because some of them are quite nice to look at, very detailed. Some of them don't reward me as much, and that's perhaps where it sort of came down. It is still well presented, and I'm listening to come up.
All right, Mandarin, can I get a comment from you?
I feel like there's a little bit of deja vu for me. I feel like I've seen similar images before. Not to say that that's bad, because this image is really exquisite. In fact, I'd love to see this printed. I think it'd look really beautiful. But looking at the digital, I scored it a silver, where I think the photographer could improve upon it. This was what some of the other points about the placement and trying to understand why there's certain sizes, there's certain elements in different circles. So it looks like there's little butterflies in the second row, in the second image. I kind of feel like I want to see some sort of wildlife, like a bird or something in that larger circle, because that seems like it's the focus circle, but really beautifully presented. So it's the sort of thing that I implore the photographer to continue on this path, because you've definitely got something there.
Thank you. Your right of reply, please, Lisa.
Thank you, everyone. I suppose I'll counter quickly by saying, the sum of the parts, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I suppose I immediately went to the presentation being floral, which is what you see on the gravestones when you see the old glass flowers have been presented and preserved, if you like, under glass for those people. So I bought into a story straight away, and I appreciate my other judges may not have seen that, but certainly that does explain the texture and explains the different sizes for me as well, and why it's only floral. Thanks, everyone. A couple of extra points would be fabulous. And
Right.
to see a print, I couldn't agree more, actually. Print could have been exquisite.
Well, we are judging the digital photographic category. Thank you, Lisa. We're currently on 81. If our judges could please rescore. And we have a couple more points, 84. Great conversation and feedback. Thank you, judges. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 78. And again, you're all really quite close there. If I could please get a comment, Adam, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, look, an interesting concept of sort of, again, that outer world thing in amongst the reality. We sort of see the landscape and the narrative is there with all the writing and the sort of, you know, the anti sort of establishment. There are parts of this image that I really want to look at, and I just feel like the highlights stop me from getting that bit of detail I want that resolves this and goes, oh, this is what they're fighting against. You know, this is, I just can't quite see into those little details, whether it's the figure at it's an outer worldly figure at the back or the little figure in the front that are really quite bright. It just blocks me from that narrative.
Yeah, really quick comment, Christopher.
If you're going for a steampunk feel, all your elements need to contribute towards it. They're quite jarring, the fact that it's a graffiti building, just a normal 1960s office building.
Thank you. Might just do a quick pause. Is it possible, asking my scribe here, is it possible just to mute me while I cough? Thank you. Sorry for that. I just had a little tickle in my throat. Let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 80. Karen, you're quite close to the average there. Can I get a comment, please?
It's a beautiful, soft piece. There are some elements there that would lift it if you looked at sort of the depth of field of the capture of the foliage. There's some discrepancy there, and I know that the very shallow fall off of the clouds is a deliberate edit, but at the same time it is a little jarring too because it's not quite real, but we're not in a real category, are we? So well done to the photographer and artist.
Thank you. Before we move on, we might do another quick judge change. If I could get Adam, Lisa and Mandarin to jump off, and if I could get Kelly, Chris Saunders and Julie to jump on, please. Thank you, judges. Let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 75. Christopher, Ian, you're right on the average there. Could I get a comment, if that's okay?
Again, I'm just going to go back to my roots as a portrait photographer, because this would be so much more successful if you adjusted your technique and everything else to making the person. And what's happened here is you've lit, almost as an afterthought, her abdomen, her belly button. Her face is just so disappointingly underlit, and that leg is too angular. You've got to think of what you're trying to set, the ethos you're trying to create, and so let's have some grace there.
Thank you for your feedback. Next comment, next image. All right, many moving parts to this whole process. Keeping me on my toes, that's for sure. As I've said, we are judging the Digital Photographic Artist category, and AZO are our sponsor for this category, and we are judging the images on an AZO monitor. I think it was 2012. I won a category, and I had to thank the sponsors, and I said, what did I say? I said, yes, I pronounced it incorrectly. That was 2012. So that was my introduction to AZO. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 82. Christopher's going to take it away on a 92 with a challenge.
This is totally successful. It's a concept. It's digital art. It's brilliant. A person who was raised in the 1970s on the idea that spaceships would be shapes we were not expecting. This is a square. The texture and the ground is perfect. The vignette on the white salt plane is perfect. You haven't gone to darkness. You've just done it really well. The sky is perfect. The human being, what's he there for? Is he awaiting their arrival? Or is it just hanging there, which is what I'm actually going for? The object is just beautifully hanging there. There's no motion. And the fact that it's so extraordinary just adds to its quirkiness. I really thought this would be an easy gold and I'd be a low scorer.
All right, Julie, let's grab a comment.
Yeah, I awarded it for, I guess an expected level. I found the square in the air, I would have wanted that sharper edges. It's just soft off on the bottom corners, and then the perspective of it just, to me, well, I know it's not real, but yeah, that disappointed me. And I just find it a little bland in its colour palette, so you can keep telling me more.
All right, Kelly, we'll grab a comment from you.
I've scored this in the silver range. The colour palette, I think, is absolutely phenomenal. The environment is stunning alone. What held it back was the disconnect. So I can't reconcile. For me, the figure is alone, yet there's traffic cones around, which would suggest a team or a group of people. So that doesn't reconcile. The disconnect between the human figure, he doesn't appear to actually be looking at the main subject. So I feel there's no connection. There's lots of incredible elements that I want to highly reward in the silver range, but the disconnect was just so vivid.
Karen?
Yeah, I scored at 78. The reasons that it came down were very much technicalities of shadows. Where that shadow sits beneath the square doesn't reconcile with the light direction of everything else. So you've got the cones and the shadow coming from one direction. You've got a shadow directly underneath the square, so that should be off. And the figure as well is not lit the same as the cones, and I'm not really sure, why he's standing there with the briefcase. And again, that eye connect is important to me.
Thank you. And Christopher, your right of reply, please.
I thought the shadow was exactly where it should be. Why? Because it's meant to be extraordinary. It's meant to be unbelievable. It's meant to be strange. This object's just floating there. And a person who's raised on those 1960s outer limit characters where the strangers, the dangerous people, wore black suits and trilby hats. They just look like an official from the tax department. but they're actually evil aliens. And I just think that's perfect.
All right, judges, we are currently sitting at 82. Christopher, if you could keep your score at 92 and if we could re-enter our scores. They have the full scoring range and a scoring criteria to base their scores off. We have an 84. Well done. So great conversation. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 76. Karen, you're right on the average there. Could I get a comment, please?
Yeah, I think as an action shot, something that could be entered in sort of a lifestyle category or a human category, it would work. Just being in the composite category, I'm struggling to kind of fit it in. There's a lot of grain in the image, which is fine, but could be reduced potentially in post. So just and the guy that's fishing, he's in the middle of action, so that's great. But yeah, a little more interest and story would help.
Thank you so much. Next image, please. Right, thank you, judges. We have a score of 75. Chris Saunders, can I get a comment from you, please?
Yeah, there's a lot to like in the image in terms of the beautiful warmth on the rock in the foreground and the light painting that's gone in there and just the context of the environment and the night sky above it. The main thing that I think is holding this image down for me was there's some texture in the sky where the stars are just on the edge of the top left edge of the rock, which feel a bit over processed and almost have that unreal feel to them, which I don't think works in this case.
Okay, great feedback. Thank you so much. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 82. Kelly, you're right on the average. Can I get a comment, please?
The colour tones and palette is just absolutely stunning. I'm so attracted to it. And the environment itself is just such a wonderful spot to shoot. So keep revisiting that. There's a couple of little elements in here that are really intriguing with the arrows and signs. But again, just a little bit of disconnect and conclusion to the story, I think would really elevate this.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Before we have our next image, can I get Karen and Christopher Ian to jump off, and can I get Matt Palmer and Mika to jump on, please? Thank you, judges. Let's have our next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 85. And you're all really quite close there. Julie, could I get a comment, please?
Now, this one does have an appealing colour palette. I do enjoy the warmth tones with the grey, which gives us that ominous feeling. I was recently at the Breakaways, and this feels like that around Cooper Pedy, and it is otherwise a bit desolate, so some square shapes coming at me would have been interesting. I love the depth of field, the foreground, the background. Our eyes lead into this, the poles, the squares, and into the shape in the middle, which is really beautiful. So yeah, I've given this 85, and I think we all have, or on average.
Yeah, thank you, judges. Perhaps a little bit more detail in those blacks as well. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 78. Julia, can I get a comment, please?
There's something else I've noticed within these. There's a forestation or trees within the face. And perhaps there's also a story behind this, that all this PPE stuff is single use. And then it gets chucked out. And the amount of that we go through every single day is probably absolutely phenomenal in the medical world. So it's seeing into that and telling perhaps a further story there with, yeah, just our use of single-use products that just become land waste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point. Thank you, judges. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 77. Mika, you're very close to the average. Can I get a comment, please?
I think the photographer has portrayed a beautiful feeling of light and lightness and grace and elegance. To me, it comes across almost like a single capture image, and there is a beauty in that. In terms of improving the image, perhaps. Actually, I'm not sure that I can say. Is there someone else who has a constructive comment?
Yeah, Chris, go for it.
So yeah, I got that whole floaty, free sort of serenity, peacefulness in the image, but the black and white took me away from that a bit. And perhaps if this was like in a lighter colour of tones and blues and things like that, that might reinforce that a bit more for me, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, judges. Next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 82. And we have Mika on 89 with a challenge.
I've scored this, 89, and I would like to really reward the photographer for the originality and ingenuity of being able to composite so many different images into a cohesive and unified image capture. We've got layers of soils, we've got layers of grasses, we've got layers of different textures and different colours. We've got even that compositing, that layering happening in the sky. We've got this great star shape just above the peak of the mountain. And the really beautiful thing for me is the little figures that are walking into the landscape. So this is obviously a very constructed landscape by a person, and yet it still retains that element of nature. I feel like we are looking at a mountain, hills, and even though it's completely contrived, I'm really enjoying this landscape. It gives me a warmth, a really strong feeling, emotion. Perhaps that's what I'm responding to. I really love to hear others' comments.
Excellent, thank you. Can I get a comment actually from Chris first, and then we'll come down this way?
So I was perhaps at the other end. I was on 77 for this image, and part of the reason for that was actually the technique was I felt a bit overpowering in the image and was taking me away from enjoying it. And I have to say that has subsided a bit since it's been up there. So I am listening to what everyone's saying, and yeah, just I'll tune in and hopefully get talked up.
Okay, Matt, or actually let's go Julie first, and then we'll go Matt.
I'm with you, Mika. I gave it 86, and to me it's like a patchwork quilt. And if you're a hiker or a landscape photographer, like a patchwork quilt like this on your bed would be rather magical. For me to take it to gold, I would have loved it if it was a little more seasonal. So perhaps we had some snow on the peaks and the sky also had a bit of that, cloud. But I love that it is textural and all the different vistas that perhaps you would find when you're out in nature, and then having this quilt-like quality to it just adds that extra little
element.
And Matt?
Yeah, I saw it potentially as a documentation of a single hike, and that's why they're communicating with the two people there. So these are all of the textures and scenes that they would have seen on this walk. And then hopefully the general form might represent the place that they were hiking. A bit of a lumpy landscape, but maybe that's exactly what it's like. I think the things that held me back, you've helped with one of them, Julie, is the blue area of shadow on the very left-hand edge, and just the use of that to bring people through the frame could have been a really deliberate thing, but I feel like on the side there it hasn't been intentional. And also the shifts in detail and scale within those frames, I feel like there's some really incohesive switches from one texture to another. However, with you explaining about the patchwork kind of quilt, I see that same quality about those quilts as well. So that's something I can look past.
Okay, and your right of reply, please.
So I love the quilt analogy, but also I'd like you to think about when you were a kid and you made collages, and how hard was that to find all the different pieces to make them come together so that the lines continue from one image into another, so you get this this continuity. And I think that's the strength of this image, is there's a very clear continuity of lines throughout in multiple directions. It's really been very cleverly crafted. There is actually resonances of the different layers and the different colours in multiple places. So for example, that blue shadow, there's more of that blue in the centre. I'm really getting depth, and that's, I think, an incredible strength of this. To portray depth when you've just got cut out bits, I think is really quite challenging. But I think for me, I just love that star, you know, to put that, like I'm showing the star of the show, which is the peak of the mountain. I think it's great. I scored an 89, and I'd really love to see you to come up to a high silver,
All
please.
right, well, we are currently on an 82. Judges, if you could please rescore the image. Thank you, judges. We have an 86. This is what it's all about, these amazing conversations. Thank you, judges. Next image, please. I know not just the entrance, but people watching the live stream and watching here in person are all getting a lot out of the feedback that we're hearing today. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 85. All right, if I can, I might get a comment, please, from Matt. Thank you.
It's a beautiful architectural image. I like that the clouds are kind of mimicking the highlights of the facade of the building. The people, I felt, were like, they kind of have a feeling of a little bit of distortion to them, but I did enjoy finding the little person behind the window as well that rewards you for taking a closer look at the image. In terms of other improvement, perhaps the bottom right whole section of the image is a little flat compared to the contouring of the top and the left there.
Yeah, absolutely, Julie.
It's just that to me it looked like a speed racing cycle helmet. And if somebody had walked out of there in some serious lycra with a bike, that would have been the absolute cookie for me.
All right, thank you, judges. Amazing feedback. I'm not going to say next image, please, because that was our last image of the category. All right, we have been judging the Digital Photographic Artist category, sponsored by AZO. I want to say thank you to all of our incredible judges for their amazing wealth of knowledge and experience that they've brought to each and every entry in this category. I want to say thank you to everybody live in person here for making their way down to the Photography Studies College in Melbourne. It's amazing seeing so many people turn out for this incredible competition. And thank you to everybody online watching as well. We hope you've gained a lot from this experience. I know I have, being witness to this. I love being a part of this process, and I love seeing our industry come together as a community to celebrate what it is that we get to do every day, which is take beautiful photos. And in this case, yeah, we have two amazing scribes as well here running things behind the show. As I said, lots of moving parts, and that's why we're here celebrating this, because we all love being a part of it. Thank you so much. We're over and out.